in the quiet lands outside Tikrit, where the desert winds move slowly over dry earth and old villages rest beneath the wide Iraqi sky, a child was born in 1937. His name was Saddam Hussein. Long before his name became known across the world, long before the palaces, the military uniforms, the portraits on every wall, and the fear that surrounded his rule, Saddam's world was small, poor, and harsh. He was born into a simple mud hut. There was no running water, no electricity, no comfort. Food was often scarce, and life was shaped by survival. The place where he came into the world was far from power, far from wealth, far from the image he would later build for himself. It was a place of dust, poverty, and silence. And from the very beginning, life did not treat him gently. His father died before Saddam was born. In the traditional society around him, being fatherless was not only a personal tragedy. It carried a heavy social burden. It marked him as different. It made him vulnerable. A child without a father could be pitied, but he could also be mocked. And Saddam, from his earliest years, learned what it meant to be looked down upon. His mother later remarried, and the man who entered Saddam's life as a stepfather was remembered as a harsh and cruel figure. In Saddam's childhood, home was not a place of safety. It was a place where fear could arrive at any moment. The young boy endured beatings. He endured humiliation. He endured a kind of loneliness that sinks deep into the heart. For a child, such experiences can shape the way the world is understood. Some children grow from pain with compassion. Others grow from pain with suspicion. Saddam's early world taught him that kindness was rare, that weakness was dangerous, and that strength was the only language people respected. Outside the house, the pain continued. Other children mocked him for being fatherless. They teased him. They pushed him. They made him feel that he had no place among them. So Saddam began to defend himself. He carried a metal rod when he left the house. It was a small object, but in the life of a child it became a symbol of fear, a symbol of anger, a symbol of the idea that violence could protect him when nothing else would. In those early years, a pattern began to form. Saddam learned not to trust easily. He learned to see others as threats. He learned to hide weakness. He learned that power could silence those who mocked him. And slowly, inside the lonely boy from Tikrit, a hard shell began to grow. Pause. As the years passed, Saddam's poverty became more than a condition. It became a wound. He saw other children with better homes, better clothes, better chances. He saw families that seemed more secure than his own. He saw a world that had denied him comfort, dignity, and protection. And inside him grew a hunger. Not only for money, not only for respect, but for control. A desire to never again feel small. A desire to never again be at the mercy of another person. This desire would one day carry him far beyond the mud hut of his childhood, but it would also carry Iraq toward decades of fear and war. Because when power is born from pain, it can become dangerous. And when a wounded child grows into a ruler who sees the world as an enemy, an entire nation may pay the price. Pause. When Saddam was around 10 years old, his life changed. He was sent to live with his uncle, Karala Talfa, in Tikrit. Karala was a former army officer and a school teacher. He was also deeply political. He believed strongly in Arab nationalism and opposed foreign influence in Iraq. For Saddam, this move was a turning point. For the first time, he entered a home where education mattered. He learned to read. He learned to write. He learned to spell his own name. After years of deprivation, the world of books, ideas, and politics opened before him. But Karala did not teach him only letters. He taught him history as he understood it. He spoke of Iraq's place in the Arab world. He spoke of British influence, foreign control, and the humiliation felt by many Iraqis who believed their country had never truly become free. Saddam listened, and for a boy who had grown up feeling powerless, these ideas were powerful. They gave him an explanation for suffering. They gave him enemies to blame. They gave him a larger story to belong to. His personal anger began to merge with political anger. His childhood wounds began to attach themselves to the language of nationalism, pride, and revenge. Pause. To understand Saddam's rise, one must understand the Iraq of his youth. Iraq had formally gained independence from Britain in 1932, but many Iraqis felt that independence existed mostly on paper. British power still influenced foreign policy. British interests remained tied to oil. The Iraqi monarchy was seen by many as connected to foreign influence and distant from the lives of ordinary people. Across the Arab world, the old order was beginning to shake. The First World War had ended centuries of Ottoman rule in the Middle East. European powers had drawn borders, created mandates, and shaped new states according to their own interests. For many Arabs, this history created a deep feeling of betrayal. In Iraq, nationalism grew. People wanted dignity. They wanted control over their own resources. They wanted a country that belonged to them, not to foreign companies, foreign officers, or foreign ambassadors. This was the atmosphere in which Saddam came of age. And as he entered his teenage years, politics became more than an idea. It became his path. Pause. In 1955, Saddam moved with his uncle to Baghdad. Baghdad was not Tikrit. Baghdad was the capital, a city of ministries, soldiers, students, markets, old streets, and political whispers. It was a city where ideas moved quickly, where anger could become protest, and where protest could become revolution. Under his uncle's influence, Saddam became attracted to the Ba'ath Party. At the time, the Ba'ath Party was not yet the massive ruling machine it would later become. It was smaller but ambitious. Its ideology was secular and Arab nationalist. It spoke of unity. It spoke of liberation. It spoke of removing imperial influence from the Arab world. For Saddam, the party offered belonging. He was not a great intellectual. He was not a refined political theorist. He was a young man shaped by hardship, anger, and ambition. And in the world of revolutionary politics, those qualities could be useful. He joined demonstrations. He worked with local party cells. He learned the language of loyalty and secrecy. He learned that politics in Iraq was not polite debate. It was danger. It was conspiracy. It was power moving in shadows. Pause. Then came July 14, 1958. On that day, Iraq's monarchy fell. A group of military officers, inspired by Arab nationalist movements and angered by the old order, moved against the royal government. The coup was swift and bloody. The royal family was killed. The prime minister was hunted down. Crowds filled the streets. The old Iraq had collapsed. General Abdul Karim Qasim became the new leader. For many Iraqis, this was a moment of revolutionary hope. The monarchy was gone. Foreign influence seemed weaker. A new republic had been born. But revolutions rarely remain united for long. Soon divisions appeared. Some supported Qasim's idea of putting Iraq first, focusing on Iraqi nationalism and national independence. Others, including many Baathists and Nasserists, wanted Iraq to join the wider Arab nationalist movement led by Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser had become a hero across the Arab world after the Suez Crisis of 1956. To millions, he represented defiance, unity, and pride. Many young officers and activists wanted their own countries to follow his path. The Baathists believed Qasim had betrayed this Arab dream, and so he became their enemy. Pause. In October 1959, Saddam Hussein took part in an assassination attempt against Qasim. The plan was meant to be precise, but when the moment came, chaos erupted. Gunmen opened fire in the street. Qasim was wounded but survived. One of the attackers was killed. Saddam himself was shot in the leg. The attempt failed. Saddam fled Iraq. He escaped first into hiding, then eventually to Egypt, where he waited in exile. This moment was important. For Saddam, it confirmed a lesson that Iraqi politics had already begun teaching him. Power could be reached through violence. Enemies could be removed through violence. History could be changed through violence. And failure, if survived, could become part of a legend. Pause. In 1963, another coup removed Qasim from power. The Baathists rose again, and Saddam returned to Iraq. He married Sajida Talfa, the daughter of his uncle Kararallah. This marriage strengthened family and tribal bonds, which were deeply important in Saddam's political world. Around him, a network began to form. Family, tribe, party, security. These would become the pillars of his future power. But Iraq remained unstable. The Baathists soon lost power again. Political factions fought one another. Military officers plotted. Presidents rose and fell. In this atmosphere, Saddam learned caution. He learned secrecy. He learned that survival required patience. He was arrested and imprisoned for plotting against the government. For 2 years, he remained behind bars. Then, in 1966, he escaped. By now, Saddam was no longer simply an angry young activist. He was becoming a political operator. He understood the party. He understood fear. He understood that power belonged to those who could organize, intimidate, and wait. And in 1968, his waiting ended. Pause. In July 1968, the Ba'ath Party returned to power. Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr became president. Al-Bakr was older, respected, and connected. He was also from Tikrit, and Saddam became one of his closest and most trusted men. Officially, Saddam was not yet the ruler. But behind the scenes, he began to build something powerful. He focused on security. He placed loyal men inside the military. He created political networks inside the state. He made sure that officers, officials, and party members understood where real authority was beginning to gather. Saddam understood something essential about dictatorship. A ruler does not need to command every soldier directly. He needs to control the men who control the soldiers. He needs to control information. He needs to control fear. And slowly, carefully, Saddam built that control. Pause. At the same time, Iraq was changing. The country possessed enormous oil wealth. Beneath its soil lay one of the great sources of national power. But for decades, many Iraqis believed that too much of that wealth had been controlled by foreign interests. Saddam saw oil as the key to Iraq's future. And in 1972, Iraq nationalized its oil industry. This was one of the boldest moves of Saddam's career. It allowed the Iraqi state to take direct control of oil revenues. And as oil prices rose in the 1970s, money began flowing into the country on a massive scale. For many Iraqis, this period became a time of real progress. Schools were built. Hospitals were expanded. Roads, bridges, and housing projects appeared. Literacy campaigns spread across the country. Education became more available to millions of people. Women gained greater access to universities and professional life. Healthcare improved. The Iraqi state began to present itself as modern, confident, and rising. In the eyes of many citizens, Saddam seemed like the energetic leader behind this transformation. Even though al-Bakr was president, Saddam's image grew stronger. He appeared on television. He visited factories. He met workers. He spoke about dignity, development, and national pride. A new image was being created. Saddam Hussein, the strong man of Iraq. The man who had taken oil back from foreign hands. The man who promised to build a modern Arab power. Pause. But beneath the construction projects, beneath the schools and hospitals, beneath the speeches about dignity, another Iraq was taking shape. A police state. The security services grew stronger. Prisons filled with political detainees. Informers spread through society. People became careful with their words. A joke could be dangerous. A whisper could be reported. A friendship could be a trap. Saddam knew that prosperity could make people grateful, but fear could make them obedient. He used both. He built roads and schools, but he also built networks of surveillance. He spoke of the people, but he did not trust the people. He spoke of national unity, but he ruled through suspicion. And as his power expanded, his image became unavoidable. Portraits of Saddam appeared in public buildings, offices, schools, streets, and homes. His face became part of the visual landscape of Iraq. Like the sun in the sky, it seemed always present. This was not accidental. It was the beginning of a cult of personality. Pause. By the late 1970s, Saddam believed the time had come. President Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr was aging. He had become less active. Saddam, by contrast, controlled the party machinery, the security services, and much of the army. On July 16, 1979, Saddam forced al-Bakr to resign, and Saddam Hussein became president of Iraq. He was now the official ruler. But the title alone was not enough. He wanted absolute obedience. Less than a week after taking power, Saddam called a meeting of senior Ba'ath Party officials. The scene became one of the most chilling moments in modern Iraqi political history. In the meeting, Saddam announced that a conspiracy had been discovered inside the party. A man, reportedly tortured beforehand, read a list of names. One by one, party officials were accused of betrayal. Some were taken from the room. Some cried. Some begged. Some declared loyalty. But the outcome had already been decided. Many were later executed. What made the event especially terrifying was not only the purge itself, it was the performance. The message was clear. Saddam was now in full control, and anyone who stood in his way could disappear. He also forced others within the party to take part in the violence, binding them to him through fear and guilt. After this, loyalty to Saddam became the only safe path. Not loyalty to Iraq. Not loyalty to the Ba'ath Party. Not loyalty to an idea. Loyalty to Saddam himself. Pause. From that point forward, Iraq became a state built around one man. Security agencies multiplied. Intelligence services watched the army, the party, the public, and even one another. Saddam encouraged competition between these agencies so that no single institution could become strong enough to challenge him. Everyone watched everyone, and everyone feared being watched. Even Saddam's relatives were not always safe. Over the years, people close to him could rise quickly, but they could also fall suddenly. To become too powerful, too popular, or too independent was dangerous. The message was simple. No one stood above Saddam. No one was beyond his suspicion. Pause. Then beyond Iraq's eastern border, history shifted again. In 1979, Iran's monarchy collapsed. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, had ruled Iran for decades. His government had used oil wealth to modernize the country and build a powerful military. Iran had become one of the strongest states in the region. But beneath the image of strength, deep anger had grown. Many Iranians resented inequality, political repression, corruption, and rapid westernization. Religious leaders, students, workers, and opposition groups turned against the Shah. In early 1979, the Shah left Iran. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile. The Islamic Revolution had triumphed. Iran became an Islamic republic. For Saddam, this was alarming. Iraq had a Shia majority population, while Saddam and much of his ruling elite came from the Sunni Arab minority. Khomeini spoke of exporting revolution. He challenged monarchies and secular rulers across the region. Saddam feared that Iran's revolution could inspire unrest among Iraqi Shia. He also saw opportunity. Iran seemed weakened by revolution. Its army had been purged. Its leadership was divided. Its new government was still trying to consolidate power. Saddam believed the moment was right. He imagined that a sudden attack could defeat Iran quickly. He imagined that Iraq could become the dominant power of the Gulf. He imagined victory. Pause. There was also the old dispute over the Shatt al-Arab, the waterway where the Tigris and Euphrates meet and flow toward the Gulf. This waterway mattered deeply. It was strategic, symbolic, and economic. Iraq and Iran had long argued over control of it. In 1975, Saddam had accepted the Algiers Agreement with Iran's Shah, making concessions over the waterway in exchange for Iran ending support for Kurdish rebels inside Iraq. But Saddam never forgot the humiliation. After the Iranian Revolution, he believed he could reverse that agreement and reclaim what he saw as Iraq's rights. So in September 1980, Iraq attacked Iran. War had begun. Pause. Saddam expected speed. He expected confusion in Iran. He expected the Iranian military to collapse. Iraqi aircraft struck Iranian air bases. Ground forces crossed the border. Iraqi troops moved into several fronts, especially toward the oil-rich province of Khuzestan, home to many Arabs and strategically vital cities. But the war did not unfold as Saddam imagined. The Iranian state did not collapse. Instead, the invasion united many Iranians. Cities resisted fiercely. Khorramshahr became a place of brutal urban fighting. Abadan endured a long siege. Iranian soldiers, revolutionary guards, volunteers, and ordinary citizens fought back with determination. What Saddam had imagined as a quick campaign became a grinding war. Weeks became months. Months became years. Pause. The Iran-Iraq War became one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts of the 20th century. It was a war of trenches, artillery, missiles, air raids, and human wave assaults. It was a war fought across deserts, marshes, rivers, cities, and oil fields. It was a war that consumed young men by the tens of thousands. Iran, despite sanctions and internal chaos, continued to resist. The revolution, instead of weakening under attack, used the war to strengthen itself. Khomeini presented the conflict as a sacred defense of the nation and the revolution. Inside Iran, rivals were crushed. Political opposition was reduced. The Islamic Republic became more centralized and more determined. Saddam had hoped to destroy the revolution. Instead, he helped it survive. Pause. By 1982, Iranian forces had pushed Iraq back from much of the territory it had captured. Saddam tried to seek peace, but Iran refused. Khomeini wanted Saddam removed. He wanted the war to continue until Iraq's regime was defeated or humiliated. Now the war changed. Iraq moved from offense to defense. Saddam's goal became survival. He built defensive lines. He relied on artillery, armor, and chemical weapons. He expanded the military and demanded loyalty from commanders who were often too afraid to question him. Saddam had no deep military experience, but he involved himself heavily in strategy. Because of the fear he had created, few officers dared to disagree with him openly. This was one of the great weaknesses of his system. A dictatorship can force obedience, but it often silences truth. And when truth is silenced during war, soldiers die. Pause. Inside Iraq, Saddam worked hard to protect his image. He did not want the Iraqi people to feel the full weight of the war. Using oil revenues and foreign loans, he imported goods, funded public life, and maintained the appearance of stability. Shops still had products. Public events still praised the leader. Television still showed Saddam visiting soldiers, workers, farmers, and families. The message was always the same. The leader is strong. The nation is united. Victory is near. But beyond the cameras, families were grieving. Letters arrived. Funerals took place. Young men vanished into the front lines and did not return. The war was eating the country from within. Pause. At the same time, the international situation became complicated. Many Arab Gulf states supported Iraq financially. They feared Iran's revolution and worried that it could spread to their own populations. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Gulf states gave Iraq billions of dollars. Western governments also saw Iran as a threat. Some provided intelligence, trade, or indirect support to Iraq, not because they trusted Saddam, but because they feared Khomeini more. The war became part of a larger regional balance. Iran was isolated. Iraq was supported. But support did not bring victory. By the mid-1980s, the war had become a deadlock. Neither side could win decisively. Neither side wanted to surrender. And so the killing continued. Pause. One of the darkest aspects of the war was Iraq's use of chemical weapons. Iraqi forces used chemical attacks against Iranian troops. Later, chemical weapons were also used against Kurdish civilians, most infamously in Halabja in 1988. These acts became among the most horrific crimes associated with Saddam's rule. They revealed the extreme measures his regime was willing to use in order to survive, punish, and terrorize. The same man who had once promised modernization and national dignity had turned his state into a machine of war and fear. Pause. By 1988, after 8 years, both Iraq and Iran were exhausted. The cost was almost beyond imagination. Hundreds of thousands had died. Many more were wounded. Cities were damaged. Economies were strained. Families were broken. Iran finally accepted a United Nations-brokered ceasefire. Khomeini famously described accepting peace as bitter, like drinking poison. For Saddam, the end of the war was not a true victory. He celebrated publicly, of course. He presented himself as the defender of Iraq and the Arab world. But the reality was different. Iraq had not conquered Iran. It had not overthrown Khomeini. It had not achieved the easy victory Saddam had promised himself. Instead, Iraq emerged with a massive army, deep debts, and a damaged economy. The country that had seemed full of promise in the 1970s was now burdened by the cost of war. And Saddam, instead of reflecting on the disaster, began looking for another way to assert power. Pause. The war had left Iraq owing enormous sums of money, especially to Kuwait and other Gulf states. Saddam believed Iraq had fought on behalf of the Arab world against Iran. He believed the debts should be forgiven. He accused Kuwait of harming Iraq economically by overproducing oil and lowering prices. Tensions rose. Then in August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. This was one of Saddam's most catastrophic decisions. He may have believed the world would accept it. He may have believed the United States would not respond with force. He may have believed that his large army could intimidate the region. But he miscalculated. An international coalition formed against him. In 1991, the Gulf War drove Iraqi forces out of Kuwait. Iraq's military was devastated. Its infrastructure was bombed. Its international isolation deepened. And after the war came years of sanctions that caused immense suffering among ordinary Iraqis. Pause. The 1990s were a painful decade for Iraq. The country that had once invested in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and modernization now struggled under sanctions, poverty, and isolation. Electricity was unreliable. Medical supplies were limited. Families faced shortages. Professionals left the country when they could. A once promising society became increasingly trapped. Yet Saddam remained in power. His palaces still stood. His portraits still watched over streets and offices. His security forces still guarded the regime. The people suffered, but the system endured. This became one of the central tragedies of Iraq under Saddam. The ruler survived. The nation weakened. Pause. In 2003, the United States and its allies invaded Iraq. Saddam's regime collapsed quickly. The statues came down. The portraits were torn apart. The man who had once seemed untouchable fled into hiding. He was later captured near Tikrit, not far from the region where his life had begun. The image was striking. A man who had built a system of fear, who had commanded armies, who had filled cities with his own likeness, was found hiding underground. The story had come full circle. From the dust of Tikrit to the palaces of Baghdad. From the palaces of Baghdad back to the earth. Pause. Saddam Hussein was later tried and executed. But his fall did not bring peace to Iraq. The country entered years of instability, violence, foreign occupation, sectarian conflict, and political struggle. This is another part of the tragedy. Dictatorships often leave behind deep wounds. When fear holds a country together for decades, its collapse can release all the tensions that were buried beneath the surface. Saddam's Iraq was not only ruled by one man. It was shaped by a system that rewarded loyalty, punished honesty, and made fear part of daily life. When that system fell, Iraq had to face the ruins it left behind. Pause. So what is the story of Saddam Hussein? It is the story of a poor child from Tikrit who rose to become one of the most powerful rulers in the Middle East. It is the story of a man shaped by violence who came to believe that violence was the foundation of power. It is the story of a leader who used oil wealth to build schools, hospitals, roads, and a modern state, while also building prisons, secret police networks, and a culture of fear. It is the story of a man who dreamed of greatness, but led his country into devastating wars. It is the story of Iraq's lost possibilities. Because Iraq had so much. It had rivers, oil, history, culture, educated people, ancient cities, a strategic position, a chance to become one of the leading nations of the region. But under Saddam, ambition became obsession. Security became paranoia. National pride became militarism. And leadership became domination. Pause. Perhaps the most haunting part of Saddam's story is the contrast. The same state that expanded education also silenced free thought. The same regime that built hospitals also filled prisons. The same leader who spoke of dignity used fear to govern his own people. The same man who claimed to defend Iraq repeatedly led it into disaster. This contradiction defines his legacy. progress and repression, modernization and terror, national pride and national ruin. Pause. And when we return, in our imagination, to the beginning, we see again the child outside Tikrit, a boy in a mud hut, a boy without a father, a boy mocked by others, a boy carrying a metal rod to protect himself. Was Saddam made by that childhood? Or did he choose, again and again, to turn his wounds into weapons? History rarely gives simple answers, but it does leave warnings. It warns us that pain, when joined with ambition and unchecked power, can become destructive. It warns us that a nation cannot be truly strong when its people are afraid to speak. It warns us that oil wealth, armies, and monuments cannot replace justice, trust, and wisdom. And it warns us that one man's hunger for control can alter the fate of millions. Pause. Tonight, as the desert wind moves quietly across the plains of Iraq, the story of Saddam Hussein remains heavy with lessons. It is a story of survival and ambition, of power and fear, of dreams built in oil and destroyed by war. It begins in poverty. It rises through conspiracy. It shines briefly with promises of national greatness. And then it falls into violence, isolation, and ruin. In the distance, the old roads of Tikrit remain. The Tigris continues to flow. Baghdad still carries its long history beneath the noise of the present. And Iraq, ancient and wounded, continues forward. Not as the possession of one ruler, not as the image on a wall, but as a land of people, memory, sorrow, and hope. And there, in the quiet space between history and night, we leave this story. Slowly, calmly, with one final question. How many nations have been changed forever because one wounded man believed that power was the only way never to be powerless again?